All right, welcome back to College Football Addiction. We've got Drake C. Toll on with us, Locked On Big 12. Our video today presented by BetUS. More on them later. Drake, we're going to talk a little bit about some money today, what everyone wants to talk about in the middle of February when there's no football to actually talk about. But the ACC, the Big 12, trying to figure out how to, in any scenario, stay relevant, stay competitive with the Power 2, the Big 10 and the SEC when it comes to money that's being paid out. We know the Big 10 and the SEC, they have larger fan bases a lot of times. They have maybe more deeper pockets when it comes to fan bases. They make more from ESPN and Fox and CBS and all these others, and they make more in the playoff. But on the ACC and the Big 12 specifically, a report has surfaced that is the ACC pulling pretty far ahead of the Big 12 too? I'm not trying to turn this into an ACC Big 12 thing. I don't like the ACC enough to fight for that conference. But is the ACC like way ahead of the Big 12 even?
$20 million ahead, if you ask Tony Altimore, who posted a graphic that utilizes some Florida State sourcing to say that ACC schools are making, according to his graphic, $51.3 million per year. That's in media rights from 2025 to 2031. And the Big 12 making about $20 million less at 31.7. Turns out, TJ, the only problem with that is it's a complete lie. It's wrong. It's wrong. Somebody who claims to be, and I don't mind saying this because this has happened multiple times with the same person, the same account. People believe it. He's had to block pretty much everyone that exists on the Bird app. He's saying there's a $20 million a year gap. And then Jeff Fuller, who's another source on college football, says the actual original Florida State source is like, oh, by the way, I did my math wrong. Sorry. And Tony Altimore hasn't deleted the original post, hasn't really corrected much or accepted accountability for false data and propaganda. It turns out this is just not real. The actual numbers may be around that 5 to 7 million mark, around the 6 to 7 million mark. That is from Jeff Fuller, his opinion. And the reason those numbers are skewed is because Cal, Stanford, SMU taking less money, or if you're in SMU's case, no money, you're paying your way to be in the ACC. So yeah, on average and by and large, their teams are going to make more than Big 12 schools because they're getting screwed over, and they're setting this new precedent where they do all of this sharing based on your brand size that now they're going to give Florida State and Clemson way more money than a Wake Forest, and everyone's going to be ticked off in 2031. The big schools are going to leave. But it's unequivocally untrue that the Big 12 is making $20 million less per school than the ACC. This is just one of those, off-season Twitter lies where somebody posts a graphic to drum up, a lot of attention. And look, TJ, you and I, we work in we work in the field of attention, of entertainment. We want people to come to our show. And oftentimes we're addressing claims that are false or claims that are overblown. Never are we reporting blatantly incorrect things, posting graphics that are blatantly incorrect and misleading. And that is the exact case we have here.
Yeah, the numbers, and there's different speculation, right? Because we don't have exact contracts. We haven't seen everything. The numbers that I've seen, the most optimistic on the ACC side, but that are also being realistic, are about $8.5 to $9 million more, right? Yeah. So probably more in line with the 5, 7, 6 number that you're talking about.
Likely.
The most optimistic folks that I've seen that have really broken this down say it's about $9 million. That doesn't account for the very real possibility of how much money is the ACC network making? How long are Florida State, Clemson in this league? UNC, others that we've talked about, Miami. And so, yeah, when you project this out over the length, the span that it is, yeah, I mean, however you want to come up with your numbers, how you want to come up with your numbers, everybody's going to have a little bit different view or take on that. The idea of $20 million or more, right, would be a massive problem for the Big 12. Just not a realistic problem for the Big 12.
Yeah, right, and it's not only is it not realistic, I think that this level of trolling is irresponsible and something that most people should call out. They shouldn't be blocked by a guy like this. He writes, try to remember that the few creepy Big 12 troll fans harassing people in the comments are not representative of the broader base of great Big 12 fans. No, man, we are. We are in the comments right now representative of the entire Big 12, because when someone lies about about this conference and lies in a large way. They need to take responsibility, and Big 12 fans should push back against this. And here's the reason why. A lot of people will say,
I will get right back to chatting with Drake, but first, I want to tell you about our friends over at BetUS. The Super Bowl coming up in a little over a week. If you're betting on that, if you're betting on college hoops, if you're betting on anything sports related, make sure you're doing it with our friends over at BetUS. Right now, you can use our code YouTube150 to get a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit, 125% on your next two, all of that up to $2,000. We appreciate BetUS for their support this season and hope that you'll be betting with them.
oh, this doesn't matter. It's water under the bridge. It's not in a year or two. It won't be a thing. The more propaganda that comes out from the SEC, the old Pac-12, the Big Ten, anybody, the ACC included, against the Big 12, the worse the conference looks on a national scale. Here's an example. In any given game in college football, if the number 23 team is playing the number 24 team, less people will watch that than if the number 7 team is playing the number 8 team. So people are like, oh, well, rankings don't matter in college. They do. They matter for viewership. Perception matters in college football. And when someone who claims to be a reputable source, someone who's been on 365 Sports as a guest of their show, someone who has joined other shows to give their takes on college athletics is spewing stuff like this, it's going to hurt the Big 12 conference. It's not water under the bridge, and we're not trolls responding to this. We're people trying to save a brand and trying to represent in a very real way a Big 12 that's overlooked by so many.
Yeah, I think what's interesting when you think about like the angle, right? You talk about Tony Altomore specifically, and I don't really care about calling people out or some great, but at the end of the day, this is the guy that posted it. So own up to what you post and what you represent is truth.
Hey,
we all have our angles.
If he wants to join us, great, man.
Sure,
come on, talk about it.
I would imagine not, because you said the Big 12 trolls and folks in the comment, all of those comments that you mentioned are now hidden, right, on by the original poster. But I would imagine he doesn't want to join us because most people cannot stand up when they're corrected on things.
Yeah.
Everyone, though, has their angle. Everyone has their motive for why they. Did you take stats? You can represent anything in the world with stats that you want to, and you can paint any narrative that you want to with any stat in the world. And I can tell you why this is accurate or why this is inaccurate because of stats. His angle is the most interesting to me as a guy out on the West Coast, a Cal Stanford type guy who very much wants to see the ACC do well because he was just kind of a leftover Pac-12 guy that got placed in the ACC and doesn't want to see Florida State and Clemson leave, doesn't want to see more conference realignment because where does that leave the teams and programs he supports? His angle is funny to me because, listen, we know what your agenda is. Most people know what my agenda is whenever we talk about certain things, what we ultimately want in this sport. His angle has to be the funniest. The defend the ACC with inaccurate numbers because you're a bottom tier ACC team right now that got left over by the Pac-12 is maybe the best angle in America to me, right? I want to get out because I want Florida State in a better conference. You want what's best for the Big 12 because you have allegiances there, ties there. Those make sense. Yeah. To be a bottom feeder in the ACC and use fake numbers to defend that is maybe the most hilarious part of this.
Well, TJ, every stat is going to skew in your favor when you make it up. That will be
it ain't
true
too tough,
forever.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
The spin level is not too hard. Okay, so just on the idea of revenue in general, right? Whether it's a $6 million gap, a $9 million gap, somewhere in there with the ACC and the Big 12, I think the bigger question is, are there creative things that the Big 12 and the ACC can do to there is no closing the gap. Let's not fake ourselves on thinking we can close $30 to $40 million, right? Like that is not the 6 to 9 that we're talking about here. Are there creative things that Mark, that Phillips, who the confidence in him seems to be lacking on our side, are there creative things that can be done to help not close, but mitigate that gap somewhat?
It's not having Nelly at your halftime show. That's not the creative stuff you should do. You can market your conference all you want, but Nelly at the halftime show or having the WWE combined with you is probably not going to save the Big 12. Instead, it's getting in bed with TNT. It's going to other major networks in this country and saying, hey, could we sign a contract with NBC? Could we sign, 10 games over to CBS? From there, the Big 12 can win. You just have to break away from ESPN and ABC as an extension of that because they love the SEC so much.
Yeah, they're always going to keep you at arm's length. It's your second and third wife, right? Yep. To quote someone, like you're always going to love your first the most.
Yeah.
So, Drake, where can people follow you? That was a great analogy. Where can people follow you? Where can they find more of your work?
At LO Big 12, at Drake C. Toll on Twitter and wherever you find your podcast with Locked On Big 12.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate BetUS for their support. We'll talk to you soon, bud.
Always.